Does our Prime Minister believe anything at all?
I don't think so. You know, if I've got these principles, I've also got these others, if you don't like them.
And I suppose it's completely fine to be a politician who doesn't believe in anything if you have a programme for government, at the very least. The problem is, it's not that he doesn't believe anything and is sort of picking one lane and going down that for expediency. It's he's veering from one lane to the other constantly, week after week. It's a different Prime Minister saying a different thing. Islands of strangers, oh, I'm so sorry, that was a little bit racist. I'm going to cut these benefits. Now I'm not going to cut these benefits. I mean, what does this man actually think?
I'm not sure he actually has any kind of overriding principle driving him, or even an ideology driving him. It's absolutely absurd. I think he tried to sound a bit, down with the public with those comments. I understand people are worried about immigration. I understand your concerns about integration and the future of this country. But, and a few left-wingers get a bit upset with him, and he's forced to backtrack.
I mean, it is utterly extraordinary.
It's embarrassing.
Because Enoch Powell never said the words islands of strangers. He said the word strangers, not island of strangers. It's not even a quote. It's an allusion at the very most. I mean, you really have to be trying to find something Powellian about what Keir Starmer said in order to create this comparison. I mean, it's a complete fabrication.
He's apologising for other people's interpretation of words that he said and didn't even write himself, although he should have read them really in advance from his speechwriter. And a Prime Minister looks rather weak, don't you think, if they're apologising for how someone else interprets their words wrongly?
It's nonsense, isn't it? I'm sure we could find hundreds and thousands of words that Enoch Powell said. Should we strike them all off the acceptable, agreeable political lexicon? I mean, shall we just? I mean, if Enoch Powell said something about fish fingers, are we not allowed to talk about fish? I don't know.
Absolutely not.
I don't know why I'm talking about fish. Maybe I just want some.
You mentioned fish fingers earlier, actually, before the show.
It's on my mind. It's on my mind.
It's on your mind, isn't it? But yeah, let us know. I mean, what does this say about Keir Starmer, really? That he's backtracked on these simple words that he said in a speech that was supposed to show the public that he understood their concerns on immigration. I mean, seriously.
Now the Prime Minister has bowed down to Labour rebels as the government announces major concessions to the welfare bill.
Yes, so Sir Keir Starmer has agreed for PIP payments to continue for current claimants and for universal credit recipients with health issues.
Well, the Institute for Fiscal Studies said this could cost the taxpayer up to £3 billion more than was previously expected.
Yeah, quite an expensive U-turn. A crunch vote will now take place on Tuesday, giving MPs the first chance to officially support or reject it.
Well, we're joined now by the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards and the former Conservative MP Alexander Stafford. Paul, we're going to start with you. It's a bit of a humiliating climb down for the Prime Minister.
Well, you say humiliating climb down. I say he's just been listening to the voices of his mainstream Labour MPs who know full well that this policy was not very well designed, hadn't included some of the people most affected and didn't listen to their voices either, and is now going to go back to the drawing board and come up with something that doesn't scare people and doesn't punish people. And so the big objective, and I'm sure we all agree with this, is that we have to reform the benefit system, which is horribly broken. But this is obviously not the way to do it.
OK, well, Alexander Stafford, former Conservative MP, should the Prime Minister have thought a little more about the bill before putting it out there?
Well, this is deeply embarrassing for Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. He has a huge majority of the Commons. He can't get through on his flagship policies without backtracking. And for once, the Labour backbench MPs have got some backbone. I think they've seen what happened with the winter fuel allowance cut. They've seen what's happened with the farmers. And they suddenly realised, oh dear, we're going to lose the next general election. We need to show some stick. And Keir Starmer can't face down his own troops. And in fact, the rebellion seems to be growing and growing every single day. And this is deeply embarrassing, but also deeply dangerous for the UK's economy.
I suppose one of the big things about this is not just this specific bill, but what it says about the Prime Minister's authority on a whole host of issues. Paul Richards, does the Prime Minister have the authority now to follow through with other controversial areas of policy, whether it's planning reform or anything else?
Keir Starmer has an enormous well of goodwill in the Parliamentary Labour Party, and don't forget, most of the MPs there
Where's
were
the evidence for
elected.
that, Paul? Where's the evidence for that? You've got over 120
Well, 'cause
MPs willing to vote down this bill, which some have said would lead to a vote of no confidence.
Well, because it was specifically to do with this particular policy, which, as I described earlier, had not been thought through and wasn't going to work. But the
Are you sure about that, Paul? Sorry to interrupt. But are you sure about that, though? Because they're looking at the polls, aren't they? They're looking at the polls and they're worrying about reform in their seats or other parties taking away their jobs at the next election. Surely that is the context that's missing here.
That there is a goodwill for him because most of them do owe their seats to his election. They came in on his coattails in the last election, and they were selected in his mould. You know, these are people who were sort of selected to be Labour candidates because they were in the mainstream. We eradicated the Corbynite ideas from our party, and those people are not there now. A few are residually, but it was the mainstream of the party that caused this reversal because these are people who are sensible and mainstream. So it's not, there's no bigger malaise here. And there's certainly no suggestion of a Boris-like swap where you just swap the leader and even though they've just won an election, which the Tories rue, I think, and probably we've learned from.
OK, Alexander Stafford, you're shaking your head there.
This is absolutely crazy talk. He's completely lost any authority amongst his own parliamentarians. He won less than a year ago, 11 months ago, he won a supermajority. He can't get through flagship policy. Got to remember, although the Labour majority is huge, a lot of the Labour MPs got their seats by only a small margin. And they're realising, actually, they didn't want Starmer in the first place. They won because, frankly, the Conservatives, and I was part of that government, we made a mess of things at the end. They got elected almost by default. And now they're realising the public have turned against them. They're doing policy after policy that's deeply unpopular. And worse, it's punishing some of the most vulnerable people in society. Look at what they did to the old age pensioners. Look what they're doing about farmers. And now they're going after disabled people. They realise, Labour Party realise, their leadership is not looking after the public and actually turning the public against them. So they're desperate to try and show that Keir Starmer has no authority and no moral imperative.
OK, well, Paul, it's not the only U-turn of the day, is it? The welfare bill. There's been another extraordinary U-turn, or at least a backtracking. Keir Starmer now does not stand by his comments about an island of strangers. This was a warning that if immigration stays as high as it is, we'll all be living in an island of strangers, or could be. I think we've got the clip just to remind ourselves.
This is what he said on the 12th of May. This was only 6 or so weeks ago. Big speech on immigration. Let's listen to those words when the Prime Minister said, we don't want to risk becoming an island of strangers.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather...
Well, a lot of people said that was similar to words used by Enoch Powell. I don't quite see the comparison myself, but now in an interview today, the Prime Minister says that he deeply regrets making that speech. Paul Richards, this is U-turn after U-turn.
Well, the sentiment he was getting across was that since Boris allowed the sort of Boris surge of immigration post-Brexit, a lot of people have been concerned about immigration, and that's a reasonable concern. What he's saying in his interview today was that the choice of words, the island of strangers quote, was misinterpreted. And I've been through Enoch Powell's speeches as well, by the way, Tom, and I can see no evidence of Enoch Powell ever saying that phrase. And if we are in the business of picking out odd words, then we are in trouble, aren't we? But I think
why
the
is he
point the
apologising
Prime
then,
Minister
Paul?
was making.
Why is he apologising then?
I think the point he was making was that some people felt it was in some way Powellian, and you know that's a reasonable call.
What?
But I mean, the speechwriter didn't think. I'm a speechwriter. You know, you use words. Sometimes there are vague echoes of other speeches in your head. Every poet is a thief, but it was not a straight quote from Enoch Powell by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe he should have chosen different words. He's chosen to apologise for this because it has obviously caused a lot of a row, particularly inside the Labour Party. But there we are. It
is strange, isn't it, Alexander? I mean, you were a Member of Parliament under Boris Johnson. Do Do you see some sort of echoes, perhaps? Because there was a period in sort of late 2021, early 2022, when the Prime Minister was just U-turning almost every week, sending ministers out to say one line in the morning and it changed by the afternoon. I mean, we're not quite at that stage with this government, but perhaps we're not far off it.
We are almost. Got one big difference, though, between there is at that point, the Conservatives have been in power for 12, 13 years. This is 11 months into a new government with a supermajority. Inevitably, when you're in power for a long, long time, you get more and more disagreements.
And we're not.
But Labour are only on for a short period of time. Now, let's be honest about why Keir Starmer's U-turns on his Island of Strangers comments. It's because over the last 6 weeks, the amount of illegal immigrants coming here on small boats has skyrocketed. He clearly set out that speech to say we're going to do something about illegal immigration, we're going to smash the gangs, stop the boats, and he is failed. And the numbers are going through the roof over the last 6 weeks. And he's realised he's had to sort of backtrack because otherwise he'll look even more a failure when the latest numbers come in again. This is a result of his absolute failure last 6 weeks on immigration.
That's an interesting assessment. Yes, if he says that we could become an island of strangers and immigration shows no signs of being curbed, then he's in a sticky position, isn't he, Paul?
Well, we're closing the hotels. We're going to have this system where we can drag the boats back to France.
We're not closing the hotels, though, are we?
When
We're buying
Macron
them
is
up.
here. We're going to disrupt the gang's business model as a result, and that will get the illegal crossings down. But the big surge of legal migration happened on the Conservatives' watch, didn't it?
That's true.
That was when the big
Absolutely
numbers came
true.
in under Boris.